Gwen, tell us what EFT tapping is.
I know.
It's a mystery. Well, and with everyone else that's saying it's very difficult to specifically do these little pieces because it feels like it's all encompassing to me. So it's hard to do that. But basically what EFT is, emotional freedom technique, or more commonly called tapping. And it's a combination of ancient Chinese medicine and modern psychology. So basically what we call it is emotional acupuncture without needles. We use our fingertips to tap on 9 of the acupressure points that, that an acupuncturist uses needles to calm the amygdala in our brain, which is the threat response, the fight or flight response. And so it works on pretty much anything that has an emotional component. So that pretty much is, you know, anything. And basically, you know, I usually like to tell people, have you ever gotten your buttons pushed? And pretty much everyone has gotten their buttons pushed. You're talking to someone or you're just hanging out with someone and all of a sudden they do or say something that, boom, out of nowhere, that energy just comes up, whether it's anger or sadness or fear or whatever it is, it just comes up. And with EFT, what we're able to do is to neutralize those buttons so that you can be in the same type of experience. The person is saying or doing whatever it is they're saying or doing, and all of a sudden, I mean, there's no trigger, there's no button. It's like, you know, whatever. It doesn't affect you at all. And so there's 2 major ways. I mean, I could go on, so I'll just try to keep it really short in a nutshell. That there's 2 major ways that we use EFT. The first is to just calm ourselves. So it's calming down that amygdala in our brain, so the stress hormones are not flowing through your body anymore. It stops. The blood goes back to the thinking part of your brain instead of going down to your arms and legs so you can fight back or run away. And then you can't think clearly. So what we're able to do is to turn down or off that switch. And so, for instance, if you needed to do public speaking, you wanted to do some public speaking and you were terrified to get up on stage, you could do some tapping and calm yourself to be able to get up and do the public speaking. Or if you were afraid of flying, let's say, same thing. You could do some tapping, calm yourself to be able to get on a plane, and many, many other things. And then the other piece to this is that we can go deep and find the core trauma or cause that caused it in the first place and neutralize that, so we stop having that fear. And that's what I love to do, and I call myself an inner child advocate, and I typically help women heal the emotional pain from their past so they stop recreating it in the future. And early on, I've been doing this for 8 years, and early on I realized that almost everyone I worked with and their current stressful situation led back to a moment in their childhood. And so I started doing more and more research, and I found out there's a man named Bruce Lipton who wrote a book called Biology of Belief, and he talks about how as children we don't have a filtering system on our subconscious mind until we're about 7. So everything that happens just gets downloaded like in our hard drive on our computer, basically. It's our subconscious mind. And it gets downloaded, and it becomes our truth. And then we just continue to live with that. It's like a program in our subconscious, and we just live with that all the way. So when our buttons get pushed so often, it's something that came from way back then. And so when we're triggered, we're not responding as an adult, we're responding as a 6-year-old or whatnot. And so that's why it's a little off the chart sometimes. And so then I did some more research and found out that veterans, let's say, that a group of people go to war. They come back, this is the very simple version for today, but they come back, a portion of that group of people are really suffering with PTSD. And the other group aren't. Why? And they discovered that it's because the war wasn't what created the trauma in the first place. It was from their childhood, and then the war just re-triggered the trauma. And so then more studying, and heard about the ACEs study, the Adverse Childhood Experiences study, which was done at Kaiser Permanente in California with the CDC, the Center for Disease Control. And they studied, or they did a questionnaire of 10 questions of people who experienced child abuse, emotional abuse, physical abuse, emotional and physical neglect, growing up in a home with domestic violence, growing up in a home with substance abuse, alcoholic, etc. 10 questions. And they asked almost 17,500 people, and they found out that adverse childhood experiences are extremely common amongst most of us. And these are people who have jobs and health care, so they're very average people. And they found out that the adverse childhood experiences have a direct correlation to health and wellness and disease. And so, that's one of the things that I've been really following a lot, and I realized that's how my work impacts people, is we're able to go back to those moments and neutralize them safely and gently without it being really painful. And then the last piece is Dr. Gabor Monte is a trauma specialist with what's the word? It just went away. Addictions, and he talks about how most addictions, if not all, are triggered in adverse childhood experiences. And he talks about how the more severe the childhood experiences, the more severe the addictions. And he talks about how he goes and speaks to doctors. He's from Canada, and he goes and speaks to doctors all over the place and medical professionals, and talks about adverse childhood experiences. And he just gets blank stares. They don't want to connect that with addictions, even though the research is all there. And he believes it's because if they accept that, then they have to deal with their own childhood wounds. And that's a little too scary for people sometimes. So what I'm realizing is using EFT to help process and release those emotional, I'm losing the word, the repressed emotions from childhood. It makes a big difference. And so that's what I'm really passionate about.
What's a wow story?
Oh goodness. I was thinking about that, and I want to, because I could go on, and I work with women who have been molested. I have worked with, really deep traumatic experiences. So I thought I would bring something a little more light and fun today. I worked with my husband. I used him as a guinea pig. And he, throughout our time together when the kids were little, he had a really big aversion to being sticky. And we thought, sticky. So the kids, he would come out in the mornings in his sock feet and step on the floor, and there would be syrup stuck in the floor, and his socks would stick, and he would just have a meltdown. It was like a bigger reaction than what seemed appropriate for syrup. And so we lost many bottles of syrup. He'd gather the kids around, and off to the garbage can they would go. And so when I first started doing tapping, I thought, okay, well, we're going to check this out. So I got the bottle of syrup, took him to the kitchen sink, and I was going to pour a little bit of syrup in his hand, and he started crying. And I thought, okay, there's something much deeper here than just the syrup. So we did the tapping. And in the tapping, what happens with our amygdala calms down, and then memories pop up. And he told me a story of he's the baby of 6, or 7. He's the last one of 7, and they went camping one time, and they were camping and having s'mores, and everything was fun, and it was great. And the next morning, being a 6-year-old boy, he got up and he was dancing around the fireplace, the pit, and having a good time barefoot, and he stepped on an old s'more that someone had dropped. And it was a traumatic experience stuck to the bottom of his foot. He couldn't get it off the bottom of his foot. And we were able to tap on that and neutralize that experience for him, and that it's been close to 8 years, and we haven't lost a bottle of syrup yet. And so that's just a really, that's kind of how it works, is we can find the original trauma and help neutralize it.